All right, Trey, we are live. No intro, no nothing, just the cold opening.
I'm just going to do a quick check to see if it's live on YouTube. And then actually, I'm going to have to end up asking you a question, Brian, about what you call.
What you call? That's my favorite show.
I was going to say, is there a link is the question. Like, is there a public link is what I would like.
Yeah, so actually YouTube/channel nerd numbers should just show it right there. The channel is live, so that should work. But then there is going to be a specific link to that broadcast as well.
So just a second. So youtube.com. When I go to channel nerd numbers, I don't see it on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Oh, there we go. Holy crap. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because I watch YouTube live pretty regularly because PBS NewsHour, which I love watching, broadcast there. So yeah, it's not ideal, but if anyone is watching, we have 0 viewers actually, so never mind. But Twitch.com is having some problems today. So it's funny because I watch YouTube live pretty regularly. Oh, we got feedback, Trey. We got Andrew as well. Excellent. It's not ideal, but if anyone is watching, Trey. Okay. So on YouTube Live, all your sound comes over. So we're hearing double right now from you.
That's gonna be terrible because I didn't know.
Because on our normal broadcast, you guys can listen to whatever you want and it won't go over the broadcast, but here it will. So okay, we're good now. Welcome, Andrew. Good to have you back.
Thanks, man. It took a minute. I was just like, how? And I just realized I had to go to my my settings on my browser. So it wasn't asking me to allow anything. So I kept wondering, where do I allow it? So I had to actually physically go into.
We are live right now, by the way. We are live, live on channel.
I'll either edit it, Brian, and just cut at that point or whatever. So why don't we? If you were lucky enough to watch all that jazz, there was multiple audio, all that. I know what the cause is, by the way, Brian. Run my microphone and headphones through a mixer thing, obviously.
Yeah.
When you have a control, it doesn't give you my headphones, but everything's going together. So if there are any autoplay ads on ESPN, apologies, listener. But okay, Brian, I'm going to do like the director's thing.
Oh, yeah, slate, yeah.
Okay. Pretend that was the video. Welcome back to another Boxscore Geeks show. I'm your host, Dre Alvarez, and today we're going to be talking Game of Thrones, Rick and Morty, NBA over-unders, and possibly a rant. It's been a hectic day. We've had some technical difficulties. Twitch is down. We've been trying to get YouTube Live running, so we do have that going, and we actually, in honor of that, we have Sutton back. So Andrew, it's your call. You got two choices. So I'm your host, Dre Alvarez, Nerd Numbers. We got Andrew Sutton on. Brian, in the hype, I forgot to introduce you. Produced, voice of God, man of many hats, Brian Foster. You can find on Twitter's Boxscore Brian. Brian, say hey.
Oh, hype is the right word for it because sneak preview of our Game of Thrones segment. I'm definitely getting hype.
Okay, so Andrew, you have two options. We've been doing a Rick and Morty versus Game of Thrones game at the start of the show, and Brian geek out on that, or we can talk NBA, and then you can leave. Or we forgot to ask. We did the email back and forth, and I'm always out of it, as you know. If you watch Game of Thrones and Rick and Morty, want to talk those two, you can be in that segment. So what is your call?
I guess I'll do the NBA stuff and then check out because I don't want to get spoiled or anything because that's stuff I want to watch. So I'm just like, I'll wait.
Okay, so excellent. We're going to start with just two pieces of NBA news. The first off, this is hilarious. Cavaliers are looking to drag defeat from the teeth of victory from previously the teeth of defeat. Give you a quick recap of how this NBA offseason went. Now, I don't actually think this would have been good for them. Started the NBA offseason. Who is how am I dropping his name? Griffin? What's the first name?
David.
Oh, David.
I was like, Blake. Yeah, okay. So David Griffin was in the middle of a blockbuster, I put in quotes, trade for Paul George. It probably would have meant losing Kevin Love. And that would have been huge for LeBron James. LeBron James is on board. But in the middle of that, he gets fired. He gets fired right before draft day. And everybody's looking at the Cleveland Cavaliers going, oh, my God, what a train wreck. Obviously, LeBron James is going to Los Angeles next season. That's what everybody's speculating. Very good shot of it. We'll see, because LeBron James is getting up there in age. Then the Cleveland Cavaliers pissed off Kyrie Irving. So apparently LeBron James is mad at him, or he's mad at LeBron, whatever. Looks like Kyrie Irving is out. So the Cavaliers just look like a train wreck. But then something amazing happens. With their biggest competitor in the East, the Cavaliers have a trade to get rid of Kyrie Irving for Jay Crowder and a Nets pick, and the Nets pick is unprotected. Now, there has been some speculation that basically the Nets pick is dropping in value because the Nets have no reason to tank. That said, the Nets are just a horrible team. So they have as long as it's not the number one pick, they have a fantastic pick. Jay Crowder, who we think is a fantastic role player, and Isaiah Thomas, who, spoiler alert, we think is better than coming next season. And more importantly, they're doing that at the damage to a division rival, well, not division, a conference rival. This looks fantastic for them. Now, unfortunately, it looks like they've gotten greedy because of the Isaiah Thomas physical and are going back and saying they're wanting more. And what I'm wondering is if it's possibly going to involve them losing Jay Crowder for either give me the two guys, you know better than me. One is Tatum.
And Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown. Now, both of these players, this is what's shocking, neither of these players was good according to the college numbers, and Jaylen Brown was last year, right? Jaylen Brown was not even just a bad player as an NBA player. We expect that of rookies. He was a bad player for a rookie, period. Of these rookie prospects is that fantastic, candidly. So, really,
yeah, I don't think Cleveland realized they won.
Well, what's on the one hand, there's a very distinct possibility that Isaiah Thomas is really injured most of the season. And additionally, he's going to want a new contract, and who knows how negotiations they're going to. Now, what's funny, they could be in a Steph Curry scenario here where Thomas is injured. They are very easily able to rein in his minutes this season. There's going to be injury concerns going into the offseason, so they may be able to get his future contract at a discount. Now, that said, he is a scorer. Traditionally, if a player is just a scorer, we don't think they're worth the money. But regardless, Nets pick for Kyrie Irving is a win. And something we haven't even touched on yet, Brian and Andrew, I'd be curious your thoughts here too. Kevin Love is underutilized on Cleveland. If you look at his Minnesota numbers versus his Cleveland numbers, he's taken a dip. Huge part of that, he got way more touches. He got the ball way more. He's a fantastic offensive player. Next to Kyrie Irving, he is not. And in fact, when Kyrie Irving was out injured right after they lost the first NBA Finals, Kevin Love looked fantastic. So, in fact, if Isaiah Thomas never suits up, this is going to hurt some people's feelings or get them mad at us. We think, based on the numbers currently, Jay Crowder is basically as good of a player as Kyrie Irving, and it's probably a better fit on that team.
I agree with this. I was at the idea of I just had an idea of going tall at point guard with LeBron and having Crowder play on the wing, and it gives more possessions to Love too.
Yeah, I mean, if basically you can do kind of the Derek Fisher approach where your point guard isn't really, it doesn't matter, right? Like with the
just a spot up shooter.
With Kobe Bryant, I mean, right? Honestly, Kobe Bryant was the point guard or one of the wings, one of the good wings. So it's like X at point guard. Ironically enough, if they had been able to afford them, who's the guy that went to Milwaukee for a bunch of money? How am I dropping his name?
Jason Terry?
No, younger.
Which year are you talking about?
Matthew Dellavedova.
Dellavedova. That kind of player. Although he did get too expensive, I got no complaints there. But yeah, that idea. Just basically, if you have LeBron, Love, Crowder, Tristan Thompson, and whatever, that offense is going to be fine. And if you argue that Jay Crowder improved their defense, that defense is going to be fine as well. So I think that team's already improved. And it's just going to be interesting to see what happens. Although many are arguing that to it now where they kind of have to go ahead with it because Cleveland knows that Kyrie Irving's draft stock is just tanked now. Absolutely tanked. They're probably not going to get a better offer for it.
If I'm Cleveland, I just have to take one of their young prospects. I would probably go with not even Tatum or Brown. I would probably go with Rozier, who was kind of promising in the playoffs. He was kind of promising. He showed some things in the playoffs.
The reason I'm laughing, of course, is Rozier was allegedly the sticking point for why they didn't pick up DeMarcus Cousins, which is funny because if you're looking at that team, I really argue DeMarcus Cousins was fit-wise what they needed and contract-wise perfect, where you put him on the team, you see if he works out the season. If he does, you give him the max contract or whatever he's going to ask for. If he doesn't work out, though, you just let him go. They needed a big. This team needs a freaking defensive big. That was all they were missing. And by the way, just getting back to a point that I made in the article I wrote about Kyrie Irving versus Isaiah Thomas, Isaiah Thomas for defense. I'm sorry. This team is not a good defensive team. And it's really weird that the popular it's LeBron. I really don't think LeBron James is the reason the Cavaliers are suffering on D. And most people I talk to seem to think that Kyrie Irving is pretty bad at defense.
Well, Arturo thinks that maybe Brad Stevens can have him come around. But no, I agree with both your guys' points, actually, about the Cavs. So, yeah, if you're thinking about roles on a team instead of positions, then, yeah, on offense, that role, the primary ball handler, that's always going to be LeBron. So you don't care about that there. What you really want is someone that can guard a point guard on defense. So, yeah, any of these players we're talking about could do that.
Yeah, I mean, this trade was just an upgrade.
Because I think Isaiah won't be ready for opening day. So most likely the starting line is probably going to be JR, Jay Crowder, LeBron, Love, and Tristan Thompson. And if they if they play like 30 games, I don't think they're going to struggle that bad because I think Rose will probably be even a 0 as an impact. So I don't think it will probably hurt as much. Maybe they'll just be waiting for Thomas.
Well, I mean, and what's funny about this trade too is if they were worried that they would lose ground, right, by not having a starting point guard ready opening day, they cannibalized one of their opponents. And let's actually get us into our major topic, Andrew, so that we can go through this. The NBA over-unders. We'll see how long this segment takes because it could take a while, it could take not. But here, because there is no bit of logic that makes this work. So ESPN.com. Got to give mad props to Ben Fox, who put this together. This was the Westgate Las Vegas Superbook on Tuesday. Just giving kind of like a general PSA about Vegas posts, etc. If the actual money isn't put down, which I give us a lot of credit, Patrick, many years has gone to Vegas, put down money at Vegas, brought back the ticket, and said, "Here are the bets I got." But if there's ever a post that says, I beat Vegas, if they didn't actually go to Vegas, Vegas is just like a stock market, which means just because the morning it's released at what we're going to say here, which is the Boston Celtics at 56.5 is their over-under, which is bullshit, even before any of the trades. What I was going to say about that is there is no guarantee you would have been able to get that bet in because by the time you get there, people that do this for a living may have already sunk it because that is what I was going to say is Boston Celtics 56.5 over under. That is laughable. That was last season. They got to 53 wins. And as big of Isaiah Thomas homers as we are, I even acknowledge that season looks like an outlier, right? He's in his prime. He's played well in the past. I would fully expect if someone wanted to look at Isaiah Thomas and say he's going to regress to the mean, and instead of being worth 10 wins next season, he'll be worth 7 or 8. I would say, you know what? I've got no complaints about that. They lost Avery Bradley, who also had an outlier season, and got Marcus Morris, who was bad. About that team that was going to make me think they'd hop to 57 wins. And young players are just not who you pin your hopes on, and neither Jason Tatum or I already forgot his name, Andrew. Bail me out again.
Jaylen Brown.
Neither one of those players has me thinking they're going to be good as freshman or sophomore players. So there was nothing about the Celtics that had them looking like a 56.5 win team, which is currently above the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers are at 53.5. I think Cavaliers at 53.5, if Isaiah Thomas is injured and Kevin Love's been beat up, and LeBron James is older. I think it's a fantastic one. I don't want to touch that bet. But Boston at 56.5, if it's anywhere near there, oh my God, take the under.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think
the Philly 42.5 is kind of funny to me. That's the first thing that stuck out to me when I first saw the Atlanta division. Because I think people are super optimistic about Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Fultz. I think it's just super optimism, and I would exploit that.
Yeah, I would say take the under because it's interesting because, you know, Patrick, if you were on, Patrick and I both have poker backgrounds, and what's always a fascinating point about being a gambler is the making a bet where you know there is a good chance you will lose, but you get the right price for it. For the Philadelphia 76ers to make the playoffs, right, and be a 43-win team, first, Embiid's going to have to come back healthy. And don't forget, he had like a minor injury that they were like, he'll be back, and they shut him down for the season. That's always a warning sign to me. This is his third season in a row. He is laced up for 31 NBA games in 3 NBA seasons. Right? That's 1/8. That's not a good grade. And he's never played above 30 minutes. So that's warning sign number 1. 2, same exact point. Ben Simmons, I wrote a post about the most overhyped players, and I listed Embiid and Fultz and Simmons are the same reason. Rookies traditionally aren't good. And, you know, the rest of the team, they lost some wins from last year, right? Nerlens Noel walked out the door, and he had been one of their good players. So I think there's a very good chance saying the under bites you in the ass on the off chance that just Simmons and Embiid like click and both come out of the gate with 10 wins. But I think you got to take the under on this. I think you got to take the under to just know the odds are in your favor that this does not work out like.
And I haven't seen that, but right off, I probably could assume that Dallas is underpriced, and that's a bet I'm thinking about. And I knew the Philly was going to be overpriced.
No complaints, just bouncing around. So Dallas is 35.5.
I kind of like that.
So first off, they're going to have a full season of Nerlens Noel, which is fantastic.
In a contract year.
Just normal age curve, right? Like got Nerlens Noel who's looked good. I think there's also, this has already started happening. Like, it was a mistake of them to give Dirk Nowitzki that money. Like, if I'm Nerlens Noel, I'm pissed off because I asked for money. They're like, we don't have it for you. Here's $20 million, Dirk Nowitzki. Getting older and beat up. I think there's a very good chance that Dirk Nowitzki just gets shut down and Nerlens Noel gets the starting role. And if that happens, that's already an improvement. So, yeah, 35.5 wins. Less Nowitzki, more Nerlens. I think you are right. I'm trying to see if I can find
a full Seth Curry season.
Full Seth, yeah. Seth Curry's been,
because they were kind of like hesitant. I guess they didn't know what they had in them because he had been killing in the D League. So I don't know why they were hesitant because they weren't in playoff contention. So I don't know why they were kind of hesitant at first with minutes.
And is there anything? I'm trying to think of anything else. I'm trying to quickly look up transactions on my Slow Surface Pro for the season. I don't know if they got anything else that's going to make me.
Well, you're looking, Dre. Here's the one thing that scares me about the Mavericks is they're in this Southwest division. They have Houston and San Antonio, a lot of games against those two guys, and of course Golden State is in the West, so they're playing less games against them, but quite a bit too. Like, those three teams are just going to get
there are a lot of bad young teams in the West too, though. Sacramento, Phoenix, LA. I don't think Memphis is as good as I think Memphis is aging horribly.
I'm scared of Memphis after last season, though. We picked them to really take a tumble, and they didn't. They stayed. They stayed pretty good. So,
but you have to stick with the process, though.
Yeah,
you still have to stick. I would stick with the process of because Marcus he's overrated. He's always been kind of overrated. I think Zach Randolph is having some legal issues. I think so. He might be suspended.
Oh, he went to the Kings actually. Zach Randolph, I think.
Oh, that's even better then.
They got rid of him.
They got rid of him. So, and then New Orleans is just trailer trash.
So New Orleans has Rajon Rondo, Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins. I'm excited to see what those three can do, but the rest isn't that good. So I wouldn't want. So the over/under on New Orleans is 39.5. Be over, but I'd be fine waving that off. I think they're going to be better than that. 3 players.
Yeah,
it's like New Orleans' luck offset each other. They got good luck on one end by actually getting Anthony Davis, but then the bad luck was his injuries. He can't stay healthy.
they had so many other guys hurt last year too. It's really tough to tell what kind of a team they are based on that.
Their GM is horrible.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Well,
Who's that? Dell Demps?
Dell Demps. And I remember back on the Wages Win days, and I wrote one post for them. I wrote one post about the Atlanta Hawks, and our second piece was going to be about firing Dell Demps. Just because I just broke it down through year after year of his tenure there and the moves that were made, and it's just not adding up. So they got lucky with Anthony Davis, but eventually decisions have to be made, and he hasn't been making great ones.
They drafted freaking Austin Rivers in the same draft with like the 10th pick. So, I mean, Anthony Davis was,
wasn't that the Lillard draft too? Lillard was in that draft, I think.
I don't think he was still available though. But I just remember like Anthony Davis and Karl Anthony Towns. These are players that everybody just they're going number 1. So you can't give a team any credit for that. But you can give them a credit for how they spend a second pick. So, by the way, Brian, if you're keeping score, we have the under on the Boston Celtics, the under on the Philadelphia 76ers, the do you agree or disagree with this? Over 39.5 wins on the Pelicans. I think they can do better than that.
I'm gonna stay away from that, but if I had to bet on it, I'm going under on that.
I would go under too if I had to say that right now.
Bunch of haters around here.
Yeah, well,
it's the West. They play most of the West teams.
Numbers. If I looked at the numbers, I'd feel differently, but I haven't.
Dallas Mavericks 35.5 wins. I think Andrew and I would both agree over seems okay with that.
Yeah, I like their prospects more than New Orleans'.
I have no idea. Memphis Grizzlies 37.5 is just the right number to make me stay away. Like I think that's well placed.
Yeah,
I think
I actually agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. The San Antonio Spurs 54.5 wins. They were really good last season. That's a good price to make me stay away.
Yeah.
And the Houston Rockets at 50. They've really placed the top of the West well. Rockets are 55.5 wins, and that is just perfect because we've made this point before. As soon as you're a 55-win team, every additional win just gets that much harder and gets that much more interesting, right? If the Warriors, the Rockets, and the Spurs were a little more clumped, the teams are jostling a little more to fight for that spot. But there's a very real chance that the Rockets just hit 53 wins or something and are 2 games up on the Spurs and go, we're not going to chase down the Warriors. We don't need to run ourselves ragged. Half is a perfect make me stay the hell away placement, as is 68 wins for the Warriors.
I wouldn't even touch that Warriors one. I'm interested in Denver. What their over and under is?
Let's scroll up here. 45.5.
What they do with Moody, and I think the unfortunate thing, and I
wouldn't touch it.
A lot of Paul Millsap fans out there, Dre.
I
wouldn't touch it.
Rant about that in the future. Altitude may help Paul Millsap. The environment may help Paul Millsap, but he had a bad year last season.
I love Utah though.
Utah had 40.
I love that.
Me too.
If they had lost Gordon, they lost Gordon Hayward though, so that hurts.
That's why the Celtics number is too high, guys.
I would buy that. I would buy it on that right now before it goes up.
40.5. Oh,
yeah, that's a good one.
They lost Hayward. Did they get anything else? Because Hayward, that's 10.
They did.
Well, Rubio now.
They have Rubio.
Basically, Rubio is going to pick up most of the loss of Hayward plus how am I dropping his name? George Hill, and George Hill was injured for last season. So I think what did they finished close to the bottom of the West, or like they finished close to the 8th seed.
Well, weren't they like better than their record? Like as far as net rating, weren't they better than their record?
Yeah. Also, they had injuries during the season, and those guys got healthy for the playoffs.
Right.
Oh yeah, because they beat the Clippers first round. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I like the over on the Jazz.
Speaking of the Clippers under might be good.
Yeah, I was looking at that one too, but I don't know.
What's fascinating is I think,
and I don't want to touch Minnesota.
I don't want to. Yeah, Minnesota's perfectly placed because so much. Same is true of Oklahoma City. I think the only other one I'd want to touch that I like right now is I think the under on the Lakers is good. I really like where that team may go. They're still a garbage heap.
Next year, yeah.
I think under is probably
a lot of the Pacific is garbage.
Yeah, because that's a lot more wins than last year. They're saying, and they're not necessarily going to be better.
I like the over on the Heat and the Hornets, and I like the under on the Bucks, and I think that's all the picks I like. And I think I like the over on the Pacers. So I threw a bunch of them out, so I'll see.
Yeah.
Well, the Hawks at 25 seems low. I mean, they lost Howard, which is huge, but
they underplayed Howard though. They underplayed him.
That's true.
They underplayed Howard, so his impact, the loss of him leaving won't be as bad.
So we jumped around a bunch of that was me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down the list. I said, Andrew, I'm going to see if you agree or disagree and let you get your point in.
Okay.
47.5 wins is what they say, second in the Central. I say the under in large part because, one, I think that, I love Giannis. Love him. One, they hate Greg Monroe, who's their second best player. So I think
and John Henson.
They hate John Henson too. That's a shame. I think there's a good chance Greg Monroe gets traded. And, I've been a little salty because Seth Partnow, who was over at Nylon Calculus, and I thought he was our boy, but then he made a comment about how he doesn't listen to Wages of Wins people on Twitter. So I've been a little salty since. I just haven't. Now, it might not. There's a very real thing in the NBA where you hire an analytics person. Dean Oliver is a fantastic example, and then you just ignore them, don't listen to them, and eventually fire them. So it's entirely possible on the Bucks where they picked up, Matthew Dellavedova. They gave him like $11 million a year, and I think everybody is like crazy. Even we'd say that. We're like, we like you, Dellavedova, but take the money and run. And then hasn't lived up to it. Tony Snell, who actually had an above average season, but they gave a huge contract after having an average season, which was an outlier for him. They've hated Greg Monroe and playing him off the bench. I don't trust that. That team would be a 48-win team if they gave Greg Monroe full minutes and Giannis stays where he's at. But I think a more likely scenario is Giannis may basically just hold firm. The rest of that team isn't that good.
43 seems more realistic.
Okay, so
one wild card here with the Bucks, though, guys, is if this Boston-Cleveland trade for Irving blows up, they are kind of one of the big rumored second place teams to swoop in there and get involved. So their roster could shake up quite a bit if something happens there, although right now it's looking unlikely. And also, I'm not sure about the timing on Seth Partnow. I think he showed up there last offseason, and they had already signed Dellavedova, or it was around the same time. But
before, and then he had also been a consultant before.
Oh, okay. So he just went full-time last offseason. Okay. Then you're right. I blame you, Seth.
Yeah.
Yeah, Milwaukee seems more of a 42, 43.
I don't want to touch the Pistons. Pacers over in large part just because we were talking this little pre-show, Brian. On the one hand, I agree that Paul George, we discussed this. Paul George, but Paul George for Victor Oladipo was a win in many, many ways for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, here's what I'm going to say is controversial. There is a very real chance that Victor Oladipo has a better season next year than Paul George.
I was going to say it's kind of a wash if you're just going productivity-wise.
Well, Victor Oladipo looked like a decent up-and-coming rookie, overpaid, like on his rookie contract. Got overpaid for that extension, but looked like a decent player. Now, he had a bad season last year. Now, that could just be playing Russell Westbrook, could just be an off year. But I expect him to bounce back at least a little to be close to an average player, and there's a very real chance, we've talked Paul George's age and injury, that Paul George just never sees it again. So I think the over on the Pacers, just because I think they're overestimating the loss of Paul George in that team.
Yeah, I agree. Man, I'm just ready for the WTF engine. This what's really going to figure all this out.
Andrew, agree or disagree? Over under Indiana Pacers 31.5.
Yeah, it's so low that you have to take that one. That was easy. because just like you said, they overestimated his value to that team. So their roster is still pretty intact, and then it gives more minutes to better players like Glenn Robinson Jr. The third. I was going to say junior, but the third.
All right, let's move on to Miami Heat. They're at 43.5 wins. I kind of like the over. Just they've been banged up and injured. And
Yeah.
I think if they get Justice back healthy, Whiteside back healthy, this team could do good.
Yeah, and he's still one of the most underrated players in the NBA. I'm surprised that no one's figured out that yet, except for us.
Yeah, Miami and Charlotte have the same. That's the same story. It's injuries, and they were better than their record.
So you agree with over on both? That's
yeah.
All right, but here's what I was going to say, Brian. I jumped in like somebody was calling Paul Millsap underrated. We might talk him in a bit, and I was like, no, he's a 4-time All-Star. He's getting paid $30 million a year. He's not underrated. Same is true here. Hassan Whiteside finished, I think, top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year. He got a max deal. He had 2 teams fighting on a max deal.
Yeah, he's not over.
I think he is underrated, but it's not egregious to me at this point. At this point,
how about this? He's rated by management in the NBA, but underrated by the media and fans.
Well, I think the media is stupid on most things. So I see no change in that, so I don't have a complaint there. I mean, if he's getting paid what he's supposed to, I'm fine. Let's see. We talked
when it comes to Whiteside, he has like a reputation of being non-passing big man. So a lot of people make jokes about it, like once you pass the ball to Whiteside, it's just gonna go up or it's gonna be a turnover because he's not gonna pass it. So I guess they try to call him like he stops the offense, but I rather his version of stopping the offense rather than Melo's version of stopping the offense.
All right. Any other teams we want to discuss? I think I got most of them. I mean, the good news for Vegas, I mean, they're doing their job, right? A lot of these are just set such that you don't want to touch them because you think there's a very real chance either side happens, which is what they're supposed to do.
I find it ironic that is Pritchard still the GM of Portland, or is it Neil O'Shea?
I thought Pritchard got ousted at Portland a while back. And
okay. Because I was just about to say, it's kind of ironic that Portland seems like they're stuck on a treadmill.
Well, yeah, I mean, they get the undervalued players, they let them go, they give all their money to the overpriced scorers.
It is Neil O'Shea now, by the way.
Okay, it is. Okay.
Let's give a shout out, by the way, to Damian Lillard, who made the very astute observation that someone asked, like, will people ever accept a player greater than Michael Jordan, basically pointing to LeBron James, and he said even if there was, people wouldn't admit it, which I think is the most astute point there is. It's very true. I mean, I think,
and one of his fans said that he was better than Kobe, and he was just like, yeah, no.
Yeah, he's not. He's probably a better scorer than Kobe, but the rest of his game isn't as good as Kobe's was. But I mean, it's interesting. You can look at this. Kobe Bryant, right after the lockout in '99. The 50-game shortened season right after not LeBron, Michael Jordan left. Scoring. And scoring has gotten a lot better. And I'd argue teams have gotten better at defending traditional scoring methods. So I think there's we've talked the stupid time machine thing. I think there's a very real shot that if Kobe Bryant had to replay his career and start more contemporary, he wouldn't be as good as he was. He did benefit. We grade on the curve because the NBA is a zero-sum game. Kobe Bryant played during a very weak scoring period in the NBA history. Damian Lillard, he doesn't have the rest of the skills Kobe does, but he's a much better scorer than Kobe ever was.
Yeah, well, and especially because three-pointers, right? I mean, Kobe obviously takes three-pointers, but he didn't take as many back then, and he definitely doesn't take as many as teams do now, and Lillard especially.
If Kobe dropped three-pointers from his repertoire, he could have been a good player. I mean, he could have been even a better player. It's funny.
Well, that's my whole point is Kobe didn't emphasize three-pointers and wasn't very good at it. That's a big part of why Lillard's a much better scorer than Kobe was.
Yeah, I saw this Reddit post, and it was a link to Twitter, and it was a video of I think the Celtics versus Lakers, and it was just like, do you remember when basketball was played like this? And it was like a bunch of Kobe ISO, and he was dribbling the ball, like dribbling the clock down, and mid-range fadeaways and stuff, and it was kind of funny because Rasheed Wallace had during the summer said that his Pistons team that he was on would have crushed the Warriors, and I was just like, no, not even close.
I mean, I love that. The problem with that Pistons team, I love that Pistons team. By the way, good job, Andrew. I didn't have a random NBA history question. And I guess the real question is, how hard do you laugh at Rasheed Wallace saying the 2004 Pistons would beat the Warriors? I love that team, but I mean,
offensively, they struggle.
I mean, they would get shut. I mean, offensively, they were already like an average team, right? And against the Warriors, they'd get shut down, and the Warriors would just rain hell from three.
Yeah.
And Ben Wallace, you can't block and rebound what you can't touch, and you can't go the whole perimeter. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah. Wallace, I'll give credit. A decent stretch four, but the problem is you get to choose. Rasheed Wallace gets to shut down one of Curry, Clay, Iguodala, or Draymond Green. All of those players can shoot threes. You get one.
Once you.
Okay.
I was gonna say, once you slide Kevin Durant to the 4, then Rasheed Wallace is useless because defensively he won't be able to stand in front. He won't be able to stay in front of Kevin Durant.
I left Kevin Durant off my list of scorers because I forget that he's on this team, and that's 5 legitimate players that can shoot.
And then there's a rumor of Paul George maybe joining because Draymond Green is real. They're like real close.
Yeah, well, they hung out at some event recently, right? I forget what it was. But
and LeBron's been in
LA
lately a lot. He was at the UCLA campus, and Lonzo's brother, their team beat LeBron's team in a scrimmage, and LeBron had NBA players on his team. He had like Victor Oladipo, Nerlens Noel. So keep an eye out on UCLA again.
I would not hate seeing. I would like LeBron James on the Lakers. I think that'd be good in a lot of ways for the NBA. It really does hurt the
huge
NBA not to have a good team in LA, and it really, really sucks that that Doc Rivers basically ruined the Chris Paul experiment. So I'd love to see LeBron James back there. I think his team might be able to get a decade straight of NBA finals, which would be hilarious. But I think it would be good to see him in Los Angeles. I wouldn't hate if Lonzo, Paul George, and LeBron joined there, and then whatever stupid super team stories would form.
Okay. Let me slide one more small prediction. I think Toronto is going to have more wins than Boston. I think.
Ooh,
I can see that.
I like that. It's a hard one because a lot of it's going to vary on health, and DeMar DeRozan had a really, really hot start last season. I don't know if he can even come back from that. So that'll be an interesting one. The Celtics are going. I think part of what you're saying that right is the Celtics are going to be a lot worse than people think. They lost. People may not like this. They lost Amir Johnson, and that actually hurts. And a big reason it hurts is because they're really weak at big.
Yeah.
Horford's getting older. So, I mean, Al Horford was a decent player last season, but and this was my same point if we do talk Paul Millsap, anytime you look at a player that was good, and last season they were good, but they were less good than they were before, and they're over 30, that is not a positive thing. You don't think that they're going to stay the same or trend upward next season.
Yeah. After Horford, there's not a lot left because they're gonna play Olynyk a lot, and Olynyk he's not productive as a big.
He's overrated, but he's still young enough that he could improve. But it's not. You don't want to expect it.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it.
I'm curious, Andrew. So we have noted you as the prognosticator. Like I said, I'm doing the 538 trick of just taking full credit for when you're right. Because you nailed the MVP last season. You were on the James Harden train preseason pretty well through most of the season, and then you hopped off right at the perfect time. Right when I was saying, crown James Harden your MVP, there's no shot. You hopped onto Russell Westbrook, and of course Russell Westbrook went on to win it. Do you have any predictions like that, or is it too soon before the season to make such predictions?
I see one I'm starting to see a lot of, and I don't know why, but Giannis is getting MVP love, and I'm just like, no, he's not. That's not going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen.
Homer's right. I was the one that wrote the article that was like, fantastic sighting. He's only going to get better. And then, of course, it's when you make vague assertions like that, like he's only going to get better, and then he does what he does, and people give you credit for it. It's like, I'm going to see that jump coming. the only reason Russell Westbrook got MVP last season was averaged a triple-double for the season, led the league in scoring. That is ridiculously hard to do. I mean, even, people will bring up Oscar Robertson not winning the MVP. When he averaged a triple-double, he didn't lead the league in scoring, and the voting scheme was different. Remarkable unicornish season. And, the same was true, I think, like I'd mentioned that Michael Jordan getting MVP love and consideration when his teams were below standard. Same idea. I love Giannis. He is much, much better than other people in the NBA. If that team doesn't get over 50 wins, he has no hope of an MVP. I really like if Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder come. I really think LeBron James has a decent shot of getting MVP love because of overrating Kyrie Irving and underrating Crowder.
I'm gonna say my top 3, like just off the top of my head, favorites for MVP. Harden at 1.
Love it.
Kawhi 2.
Beautiful.
And I'm torn, so it's either KD and I think dark horse Kyrie, depending on how he's gonna have a lot of points. Of points.
So basically, because Hayward is good. I mean, we took the under on the 56.5, but there's a very real chance that team gets to 50 wins. He could get a lot of. I could see it. I think it's if Boston does what they did this year to us, right? This year we were like, for F's sakes, take the under on Boston last season, and they pushed. This season,
and then you mentioned LeBron, so he might be kind of a sneaky one too, because I think it's been a while since he won an MVP, so you don't have to worry about voter fatigue with him again, because it's been a while.
I think Durant. The question with Durant and Harden is going to be how much respect they give to like the move, right? Because it's always been voters kind of hate and kind of don't give the credit the season after, right? Shaq got snubbed in Miami, and Shaq probably the same. That's like why Steve Nash won and all that, and LeBron when he did the decision. The question is if they're going to be over it. So if Kevin Durant's healthy the full season, I think he's a fantastic pick. He was an MVP candidate this season. The question is, have the voters forgiven him for the decision or whatever? And the same is true with the Chris Paul trade. So I'll have to see on the voters.
And then once again, you brought up the gamblers market, so you have to adjust to the prices. So I think Kawhi would probably be the best price right now. If I haven't checked, so I'm just assuming like he's probably underrated. So that's probably a buy.
I like it. Any other NBA things to talk?
I think that's it. We're near the end of it, so just ready for the season. Just ready for the season because it's going to start earlier this year because of the shorter preseason. So
we're looking into doing some NBA gaming content, maybe, Andrew. We're talking about that.
Oh yeah. Maybe I've been brewing a couple of ideas about different kind of media content on the side of the podcast, and probably doing a weekly kind of playthrough kind of. It's like a visual aid. It's a visual aid of like articles. So you know how we have like articles on sunk cost fallacy, different types of biases, just like kind of a walkthrough of how you can apply it. And it's just something I just saw because I read this post on it was on SB Nation, and they took the 2K game and they put LeBron on every team to see could he make the playoffs with every team, and it was just interesting. I mean, they only had a sample of one, so I'm gonna do a lot more. It's gonna be a lot more scientific than just one sample, so should be interesting.
I like it. And by the way, there was a watch bomb while we were talking, if you can call it that. Celtics are sending a 2020 second round pick as extra compensation. So
that's so funny.
Did get the extra.
That's so funny.
They were looking for.
It's like the Cavs wanted to save face is all they wanted, and they were already winning the deal to begin with. So that's just so funny and typical of the NBA. That's my comment on that.
I love it. It's good. So the good news for that, though, is we made all of these comments and projections, and sometimes when there's preseason stuff and there's a blockbuster trade, right, we could have been talking about Houston before the Chris Paul trade, and then that trade happens, you just rip everything up. We don't have to rip up what we just said. Hold you to it. You put it on air. That was your call, Andrew. Put it on air. So regular content.
Watch out for Dallas
this NBA season, and watch out for Dallas. I like that's a good article title. I like that better than technical difficulties, Brian. So if we don't have a better. Okay. We are going to talk Game of Thrones, which Brian has been jonesing to do. So Andrew,
it's so good.
Or if you don't want spoilers, you can cover your ears. And the same is true if you haven't caught up on Game of Thrones or Rick and Morty. Cover your ears. We're gonna finish, Brian, our weekly game, Game of Thrones versus.
Can you give Andrew any shout outs before he leaves?
You want another shout out, Andrew?
Just shout out UCLA. I'm team Big Baller Brand. We're team Big Baller Brand on this side.
I'd love to see LeBron as a big baller in LA.
That'd be funny. All right, guys.
Bye, Andrew. Yeah. Wasn't 100% sure if he was leaving either, Brian, but way to make me look bad as a host. But all right, thanks again, Andrew Sutton. Regular NBA content. You can find him on the site. If you don't see him, you can yell at him in the comment section for saying he was going to do content. I'm excited about that, Brian, because candidly, as we noted on last week's show with Patrick, real world gets in the way, and it makes it hard to do regular content. And Patrick and I have both had a lot of life changes, marriage, dog, job, kid. All that changes things up. Well, let's get to our Game of Thrones versus Rick and Morty. And by the way, there's insult to injury. Next week, there is no Rick and Morty. So not only did we Game of Thrones, they're taking a week off of Rick and Morty because they hate me.
We're just quitting cold turkey. There's no like methadone or anything like that, Dre. That's really sad.
Next week, I'm going to just stare at my computer for an hour and a half straight. Nothing. So, by the way, here the game has always been which one wins. So, the Rick and Morty episode was called "Rest and Rick Laxation." That's a hard word to say. And then help me out. I know the title. It was like the Wolf and the Dragon, right, or something like that. The Direwolf and the Dragon.
Something like that. Yeah, it was obviously referring to Jon Snow and Daenerys.
No, incorrect, sir.
No,
incorrect. Referring to Rhaegar Targaryen and Lysa Stark.
Actually, Lyanna Stark, and actually I agree with that. Actually, when you say that, I agree with that. I'll talk about it later.
Someone said it, like that's what it's called. And so, again, full-on spoilers for both if you haven't hopped off yet. Now, our game has always been which episode is better. This is an interesting one where I liked both. This is my take is going to be I liked both episodes, but both episodes left me wanting for different reasons. I'm comfortable doing this, Brian. I'm taking the coward's way out. We've been talking over-unders, and a bunch of our over-unders were pushed. I'm comfortable opting out and calling it a draw.
So I sympathize with you because it's really difficult to compare. Again, the last episode of the second to last season, which is, feature length, an hour and 20 minutes long versus a half-hour comedy sitcom kind of show. It's really hard to compare, in my opinion, but I'll still just go ahead and say I like Game of Thrones more. I'll go back and forth again.
One note I'll give on that, which is kind of a shame, is I think a lot of, kind of to your point, a lot of the stuff that's awesome on Game of Thrones is they're paying off a lot of stuff that's been kind of years in the making.
Yeah.
I do feel that the writing, the dialogue, a lot of this season has been a lot weaker. And it's just gotten paid off because basically George R. R. Martin set it all up. So just for those of you who don't know, right, George R. R. Martin wrote a bunch of books. He got through 3.5 before started. And essentially they burned through all the content George R. R. Martin wrote and have kind of started. They have an outline. George R. R. Martin has told them where the show is going. And so they know how it's going to wrap up, but they're writing on their own. And it's been very obvious that George R. R. Martin is a much, much better writer than the Game of Thrones writers and showrunners are. A lot of this season, like Patrick, he summed it up right. We were like, did you like last week's episode? He's like, well, where it worked, yes, where it didn't, no. I feel a lot of this season of Game of Thrones, if it didn't have other storylines it was building off of, I would just be like, what the hell is this crap? But then it's a nice meld where I'm like, what is this crap? But oh, thank goodness they paid off that, that the Rhaegar Targaryen and Jon as the legitimate heir to the Targaryen house. That got paid off immensely. So I'm like super happy about that, and then super not happy about other things.
I from my side, I disagree. So there are some problems in the script and continuity and story and all that, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But overall, I really like the dialogue and the writing, and I just love this season, especially the last episode. The characters are so smart; they're very well written. The actors are great character actors, and I just love this type of political story. So,
as an example, though,
I didn't have those big of complaints about that as you did.
So, first off, we might talk our game in a second, but one of the things that happened on this episode is Peter Baelish, who's been, the kind of mover and shaker who just keeps repeatedly effing up houses because they'll tear themselves down and then using that to advance himself. In the book, he, I think it's named Lord of Harrenhal, and then because of how he sets it up, he's like, what's the word? When he's not in control of the Vale directly, but because he's the foster.
Oh, he's like the shadow government.
Yeah, basically, he is becoming more and more of the rulers of various realms in Westeros.
Yes,
and so there's this, for years there's this big buildup. He's one of the shadowy figures that's been moving everything, and then he just kind of unceremoniously dies, which I don't hate. But we talked about this last week. So what happens is he's been kind of trying to pit Arya and Sansa against each other, and you said Lyanna. It was Lyanna and her sister, I believe, Lysa.
That's Lysa Arryn, who was Jon Arryn's wife and little Peter Baelish's wife. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Catelyn's sister.
Stoneheart, right? How am I forgetting her real name? Yeah, Catelyn
Stark.
And it was Tully originally. So the first move that Peter Baelish did, according to the books, was he basically got the two Tully sisters to fight with each other, to go against each other. Jon Arryn and Ned Stark died. So he was trying to get Arya and Sansa to go against each other, and then it just fell flat. It didn't get paid off because it was what Patrick said last season. There were a bunch of scenes we saw that led us to think one way, and narratively it makes sense that Arya, Sansa, and Bran would get together and go, Arya says, by the way, Littlefinger's the reason I have this note. And Sansa said, well, he lied to me and said he didn't know where it comes from. And Bran can say, well, this dagger is Littlefinger's. And he lied and said he didn't know where it came from. So narratively, it makes a lot of sense that the three would just go, this guy is effing with us. And then Sansa could even say, yeah, and by the way, he killed Lysa Tully, whatever her last name was. He killed Lysa, and then also I've seen him do a bunch of shady shit. And they go, oh, clearly he's a traitor. And then, of course, we've seen the Vale bannermen, et cetera, have not liked him. So that narratively makes sense. But we as the viewer didn't see it, so it was lazy. And so I didn't hate that resolution. But to our point about the show being well-written and characters, whatever, that was not a well-written segment on this season. That storyline was terrible. Played out, but from how it was presented to us.
Andre, there is some reporting here by AV Club that I linked. I don't know if you actually got a chance to read this yet, but that pretty much confirms what you're saying. And I'm showing it right now. It's got an interview with Isaac Hampstead Wright, who plays Bran. And what he said is basically that's what they were going to do, but then they cut it from the show. So there's a scene, according to the Bran actor, where Bran and Sansa get together. Bran tells Sansa everything, and then all of a sudden she says, oh, wait, Arya is not the enemy. It's actually Littlefinger. And then they go and, do the showdown at the end. So I agree with you. The way they ended up is better, and it was just a little sloppy the way they edited it, I think, is what happened.
I'll agree with that. I did love, to your point, it was fan servicey. So, for instance, the weigh-in, right? We basically did have the Clegane Bowl weigh-in.
Yes. Oh man, you're all over, Dre. All right, that's fine.
I'm following your script.
We'll get back to it. I just have a lot to say about all these things. That's all.
So we'll talk Clegane Bowl. I thought that was needless, but I did. It's a funny thing where I was like, we've got so much to get done. You're wasting time on this, but I loved it. I loved it when Sandor Clegane, before bringing the zombie, just walks up in front of Gregor, talks shit to him, and is like, we're gonna it's going down. So I did like.
Here's my favorite part about that scene is it was kind of a throwaway at the end of their bigger conversation, right? The actual nobles were resolving all this crap. And then all of a sudden, everyone just freezes in place. They don't leave or they don't complain or anything. And they just let him walk up there and give his soliloquy. Like, they're like, why are you approaching? Or we're going to get worried about that. Everyone just knew they needed to freeze in place and let this moment happen.
So it occurs to me, Brian, you do have a lot on the script, and I have a lot to talk to. I'm going to let you guide the discussion, and I'll hop in so we can get through all and talk about Game of Thrones. Because, yeah, I realize having two directors on this can get it all over the place. So what would you like to talk next?
Well, so just to finish up the so just to give you some background, the way I set this up is basically what are the big things that this season resolved in the last episode, right? So the one of the big ones that we were talking about is the Winterfell stuff that leads to Baelish's death. And I think the eventual outcome that, basically it's a work all along and, the Starks are all on the same side. It's kind of the most obvious one. And, like we were talking about in the pre-show, and what you said on the show already, actually, is that it's weird that Baelish did all this shadowy crap and then all of a sudden just, he kind of fizzles out at the end, right? I'm okay with that because the narrative speed picked up so much and they had to get rid of his storyline eventually. There can't be all these extra stories going into the last season. So just using him to kind of build up the Starks being united with each other, like face push, I think is an okay death for him.
Well, what I'd say, so we compare to wrestling a lot. And what I liked about that is if you have a storyline that you are booking incorrectly, prefer you end it narratively the way it's supposed, like Roman Reigns, right?
Yes.
It's like, okay, it's like, we get it. You have not been pushing this guy heel for 3 years. It's going to be clunky to push him heel now.
So just to keep me up to date, I'm really behind on this. He is actually a heel now after all of our complaining.
No, I hate to say this. I have not kept up on the WWE at all. I canceled my WWE Network subscription after not this last WrestleMania where Undertaker retired, but 2 ago when
Dean
Roman
Ambrose, right? Oh, Roman, yeah.
When Roman Reigns got the title again, I said, no, I'm out. And I've kind of, I watch like What Culture periodically, but I have no idea where it is. And, the thing about watching What Culture, where I do like them, is I'm like, every time I check in, I'm like, do I want to resubscribe? Nope. And so that's kept happening. But I'm just saying, in wrestling, there are lots of times where they do the wrong story and you go, this doesn't make sense. And like I'm saying, I would rather them just narratively, put themselves back on the right track and admit the storyline was going in the wrong direction, even if it's a little clunky, as opposed to keep it going. So with Baelish, it's 100% that. I thought it was being pushed the wrong way, and I thought the logical outcome was logical, and it was clunky, but it did what it's supposed to. And then to your point, it puts us where we need to be, which is with 3 of the Starks, with, the 3 Stark children, the original children, going into the final season.
Yeah, exactly. And we do have a great crying Jordan for Peter Baelish that I'll show right now. But no, so
props.
Yeah, I guess we're done with that. We can move on. So let's go to the big one, right? And what I have on the script is it's the shipper payoff. They did have sex with each other after all. I was kind of thinking they wouldn't go in that direction. Of course, we mean Jon and Daenerys, right? I didn't think they were going to go there, but I liked the way they did it. I really liked the way they did it, which is they set it up so they have this big reveal of, oh, wait, okay, so they kind of said, yeah, Jon is Rhaegar's son last season, but they didn't explicitly say it. But then Bran explicitly says it this season, and it's being juxtaposed with Daenerys having sex with her nephew, Jon. So
we talked about NBA Reddit being awesome. Game of Thrones Reddit is also awesome. I'll see if I can remember it, but there is a fantastic Reddit post about how it turns out that, an inbreeding standpoint, that Jon and Daenerys, or Aegon now, I guess, are closer in terms of shared genes than brother sister are. So that they're actually, if you're talking Jaime and Cersei versus Jon and Daenerys, they are actually much, much closer paired in terms of genetic matchup. And obviously this makes no sense, right? Like it actually has hit a point of inbreeding where like would not be like beautiful with golden hair. Although to be fair, it's a fantasy world, so whatever. But I definitely thought that's funny. And then of course it does get interesting where basically if you talk about Westeros right now, like it's essentially the battle of incest, right? It's brother, sister versus aunt and nephew.
Yeah, so that's going to be one of the interesting things in the last season is where they decide to go with that, right? Maybe one of them is okay with it and one of them isn't. Maybe they both aren't okay with it. Maybe they both are and everyone else hates them.
Well,
like, we're going to have to see.
Narrative points. The obvious narrative point is Jon is going to get Daenerys pregnant and then he's going to die.
I like that point.
Not the obvious narrative push, that's going to happen. At least that's how I'd write it. There you go.
Yeah, that Jon does seem like he's going to die in the end, and I kind of hope that Daenerys does too. But we'll have to see. And are
you related to George R.R. Martin? You're just killing them all, man.
Well, those two are like too big of fan favorites. They just can't live. Yeah, I'm definitely channeling George R.R. Martin here, but one of the interesting things about this Bran reveal, though, and the Littlefinger stuff, is that it's clear that creepy Bran at the beginning of the season, that was a work too. So that the way that scene went, if you guys remember, is that Sansa and Bran reunite for the first time in who knows years and years. And Sansa's like, "Great to see you, Bran," and Bran's like, "Well, I'm just going to be creepy and talk about your wedding night when you were raped." And then they cut the end of the scene, right? So I think what's clear to me is that scene went on in the background without us knowing about it, and Bran's like, "And fuck Littlefinger for putting you in that situation. We're gonna make this right." Like that's how I think that scene actually happened. If we were to play it all out, so that was kind of interesting.
And it puts him in a very. I think you've got some stuff about Sam. I Sam and Bran. It's narratively it's a funny one too. Where I thought that was clunky as well, right? Sam leaving the capital, giving up on being a maester, all of that was very clunky, but it does make sense where essentially they were like, the plot dictates that you need to be next to Bran right now.
Everyone's got to get together in one place, right? Or die. Like that's kind of what needs to happen. The Theon off on his own is kind of like the last storyline that's apart from the main one.
Well, oh man, we're now it's funny when it doesn't matter who's in charge, it's easy to get all over the place. Well, let's finish up. I just thought Sam and Bran was an excellent pairing, and Sam was like, if you're talking like straight man, funny man, that combo was great. Where you've got a bunch of stuff listed here where his reactions to Bran are so hilarious, including the "I know everything about this," and then like this has gotten a lot of love on the internet where Sam comes back and admits Rhaegar was actually the marriage was legitimate. But everybody's pointing out that essentially Gilly found that, and Sam's getting credit for it, which is
A lot of people are talking about the mechanism too. Like, why did he have to ask Sam if he knows everything? And actually, again, this is a different article with the Bran actor Isaac Hampstead, right? And I kind of felt the same way the actor does, which is that it's like you're in a library with a card catalog, and you can go to any part of that card catalog and look a book up. But you can't see it until you actually consciously go and look it up. So I think that's why he had to. I think the scene where he goes into the past and looks at Rhaegar's wedding, I think bears that out.
Well, I mean, and yeah, there would be no, even if he had stuck around, right? Like if he had tried to go back in time with Lyanna Stark there would have been no direct connection because they were married elsewhere a long time ago, right? Obviously, it would have been at least 9 months in the past. So from that perspective, yeah, it does make sense. It is about that is it was a very almost superheroish chop busting immediately, where this person's like, "I'm a superhero. My power is to know everything," and it's Sam was the perfect character to basically very quickly reveal, "Oh yeah, you're not Superman yet, right? You're still learning."
Yeah, the other thing about that scene, like you said, with Sam, I forget the actor's name, being so funny as it is, it felt like he got wasted, not doing less comedy earlier in the show. But anyway, I like that scene. But
I had just liking a lot of the Sam comedic stuff, when there was like him cleaning out like vomit and stuff at the start of the season. Nah, that's fantastic. And I think adding a little levity to the show, I've always hated like the DC dark and gritty just for dark and gritty. It's like, it's okay to have funny moments.
You specifically mean the Zack Snyder movies, right?
Yeah, like, well, I mean, just, yeah, in general, the idea of when Christopher Nolan came along and made Batman dark and gritty, and the same thing happened back in the day with Frank Miller, everybody goes, oh, everything has to be dark and gritty, and they misinterpret, high stakes as everything is super serious. And like, look at the Batman animated television show back when it was good. It seems like it's off the rails recently, but
Oh, I don't think they make new episodes anymore. They just make a new movie every 5 years or so.
the movies have been going down in quality. Is what I've heard.
Oh, this is a side conversation, but let's keep going on Game of Thrones.
We don't have time for that. But I was just going to say, those things had jokes and the characters acknowledging when stuff was silly or funny, and that's okay. And so it's the same thing here. Yes, they're dragons. Yes, they're zombie White Walkers. It doesn't mean you're not going to laugh when something funny happens.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things I like about the writing and the acting too this season and others. But are you ready for some conspiracy theories and speculation here? Because I think that
though the one I think is most important, and I want to hear your thoughts on.
Oh, sure, go for it.
So, what do you think happened between Tyrion and Cersei when she doesn't kill him, but then she comes out and says she's on their side?
Oh yeah.
Was there?
Oh, that's interesting.
So what? If you recall, I think it's much more fleshed out in the book, obviously, because it's much easier to do a thing like this in the book. There is a prophecy about Daenerys getting betrayed 3 times. And it's like once for love, once for money, once for family, I believe is how it's phrased.
I thought it was Cersei, not Daenerys.
They both have.
They both have prophecies they get betrayed.
They both have prophecies when she goes to like the house of something or whatever. I apologize for not remembering the names.
Okay.
Daenerys gets a prophecy about her. The Cersei prophecy that's still going to come true is apparently she's supposed to get killed by her younger brother. And in the same prophecy, it said she's going to have 3 kids and the king's going to have 21. So there's a very real question as to if her kid's going to get born, because the prophecy said she has 3. There you go.
Yeah. So for that, everyone and their mother that I talked to think that Jaime is going to kill Cersei at some point, and that makes all of that come true.
Because the prophecy is saying her younger brother is supposed to kill her. And he thinks it's supposed to be Tyrion. Everybody, obviously, this is like what we were just talking narratively. It makes sense. He's the Kingslayer. She's the queen. He's her younger brother. Makes the most sense for him to kill her. By the way, side note, was that scene where did you think there was a shot Jaime was going to die in that scene? I thought that was an amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be like, I usually try to bring up odds in my head as that kind of thing's happening. Like I'm such a probabilistic thinker. So I'm thinking like, maybe 30%, 20% that he dies here.
I put it at 40, but yeah, when that scene happened, if you listened this far and you didn't watch the episode, your head is messed up. But there's where essentially, so here's what we're talking about. Cersei, after negotiations have fallen through, and I really want to talk about the negotiations falling through. So he goes to talk to her, and then she comes out and says, you know what? I've changed my mind. All of us, boom, we're going to push forward together north. We're going to fight off these zombies. Team Westeros for the win. And then she it's a very well done bluff. I'm giving away the spoiler where she doesn't do it, but where she says, I hope in the future you remember that I offered you my support for nothing in return. Amazing bluff. And so Jaime's getting ready to do everything. He's like, okay, here's our men. They're going to meet him here, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, what are you doing? We're not helping him. And he goes, what? And she goes, I lied to him. If the zombies break through, if they can't take down the zombies with 2 dragons, she very astutely notices there are only 2. If they can't take down the zombies with only 2 dragons, what good are our men going to do? So either one, the zombies kill them off, and we're fucked, but we have a little extra time to get out of Dodge, or 2, they take down the zombies, but they're so decimated doing it, we're going to clean up right after that's done. Jaime is like, are you kidding me? I gave my word. I'm going to help them. And she basically says, if you leave, I'm going to kill you. If you try and go out to help them, I'm going to kill you. And there's this very tense moment where it looks like she might. And then Jaime leaves, and the other thing about that part where it still had me going is he leaves, and it's this very poetic scene, and I was like, oh shit, is he about to get killed from behind? Right? Like it looks like she would go, but then it starts snowing, and he goes back. So winter is here.
So I'll answer in reverse order. That particular scene, I think that Cersei just kind of calculated on the fly. She's like, well, it's fine if Jaime goes north with the army. I can still execute the plan I just talked about. We're just going to put our army a little more at risk. That's fine.
No, I think Jaime went back, though. I think Jaime goes back to Cersei.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now, to answer your original question, how did it go with Tyrion? I took it at face value, which is that she just lied to Tyrion that she was going to help, and that was it. Nothing else happened there. But when you bring it up like that, I mean, there is a chance that somehow Tyrion, got back on her side. Then I doubt it. Like, that seems weird, but there's a chance.
Last episode, and don't forget that the showrunners this season are not subtle like George Martin. He brought up succession with Cersei, and he noticed she was pregnant. He basically said, I'll make you a deal. Your kid is the natural successor. So even if Dany wins, I will ensure your kid becomes the ruler after she dies. That's one theory. The other is that he just straight up told her to lie. Because don't forget, what happened before that, Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, basically Cersei says, I'll agree if you, the North, agree not to take up arms against me. And Jon says, I can't do that. And she says, then there's no truce. Now, what I did like is, on the one hand, this seemed very Starkish, very Ned Starkish, like honor above everything else, screwing everybody over. But at least they admitted that, like, that's the right call because Cersei was not going to honor, right? It's very clear Cersei wasn't going to honor any truce. She just wanted to ensure the enemies were not united. So Jon was right, thank goodness, but it did piss people. It did, like myself. It's like, Jon, you freaking moron. And Tyrion says, I at the right moment. So it's possible that when Tyrion's talking to Cersei, he says, lie to them and say you're going to help. And
yes, I love that theory.
So I think there's a very real chance that he's going to betray Daenerys. And again, there is a prophecy in the book that says she is betrayed for family, and there's a warning about a line.
Yeah, no, that could definitely happen. I like that. So again, just to try to finish up on the prophecy stuff, so if we go back to that scene we were talking about, where again the sex scene juxtaposed with Bran's reveal on Jon's parentage, right? The biggest line that I took from that scene that Bran says is, Robert's rebellion was built on a lie. He says that. And that's pretty obvious to the show viewers at this point. But when he put it that way, it really made me think that whose lie was it really that he's talking about here? And here's the reason I say that. Did Jon Arryn just lie to Robert and Ned just to get them to go in? Or was Robert in with Jon Arryn because, again, he lied about Lyanna leaving him, and Ned could just be a stooge?
No, the issue with the book, so sorry to just hop in here. The issue, by the way, is Aerys, right? Is that his name?
The Mad King, yeah.
He did kill Robert and Ned's fathers when they marched marched south to meet with him. That the war was still going on. Don't forget that the Lannisters did betray Aerys. So actually, that's a good point, because
so that's what I'm trying to get to, Dre. Is I think if
Rhaegar after they took the capital, was that necessary?
Well, yeah. So if they lied about Jon Snow, and if Robert's rebellion is built on a lie, then all that could be a lie. Like,
rebellion was built on a lie. It was the going after the Targaryen children after they killed.
Oh yeah, so I'm about to get to that. That's really complicated too.
Yeah, why don't we wrap it? We've been going for like an hour and 20, so I'll give us maybe like 10, 15 more minutes to.
Oh, okay. I want to get this stuff in then. So yeah, I mean, even killing the Stark family could be a lie. Like, maybe the Starks lied about all that and they died some other way. Like, maybe Ned and Robert killed the Stark uncles and are like, fuck these guys. I mean, I'm just saying.
There's lots of fun conspiracies. No, I mean, I think that the key point is the line of succession and Robert taking over and still going after Rhaegar when this was all done was incorrect. And his logic was, he stole my wife. and he said he loved her. And I think I saw a fun article about Cersei, which is funny, which is she was kind of in love with Rhaegar and had hoped her dad was going to match them up, and that didn't happen. And then, of course,
I think that's going to be a big factor in the storyline in the end.
Her husband was in love with Lyanna Stark, so it is amusing that basically Cersei, that war was essentially about the man that she was in love with and hoped to marry, and then the woman that basically kept her future husband from ever really loving her.
So my last point on that is that there is one person still that actually knows all this, which is Howland Reed, right? He was there when they went to the tower. He literally backstabbed Dane to rescue Jon Snow as a baby from the tower. He might know about this conspiracy. So, Bran sent away Mira in a creepy way. Maybe that creepiness was at work too. And Bran is bringing in Howland Reed as a backup. Who knows? So, but no, here's the last thing on this is Jon Snow's name being Aegon. To touch on what we were just saying, I think is really important, because what that means is Jon Snow is Rhaegar's either second or third son that he named Aegon. His first.
Although is that canon in the show? Because I know it's mentioned in the book, and I didn't watch season 5. I only did recaps for the show.
Well, it's not, but that I don't think it matters. I mean, whether he named 2 sons Aegon or 3, the point is unless you're George Foreman, you name all your sons George. And what I'm getting at there is Rhaegar was his role in the story as the conspiracy theorist who's behind all this Azor Ahai stuff, right? He might have married Lyanna Stark just because she was a Stark, and he wanted to make this prophecy happen, the fire and ice prophecy. Because let's just lay this out here. The reason why the series called the Song of Fire and Ice is that moment just happened, right? Jon and Daenerys had sex. That's fire and ice getting together, literally. That's the prophecy. So the first Aegon was killed, right, during the war by the Mountain, and as a baby. And so then, he might have the second son named Aegon that is with John Connington. That's the book stuff you're talking about.
Did that show up in the show? Because I know
it didn't. So either that guy is a fraud, which they were talking about, or maybe he does have another son named Aegon. Who knows? Because Rhaegar was obsessed with the prophecy.
My take, by the way, personally, is just the show never mentioned the other kid named Aegon, so they're just doing that to. I don't know.
No, what you're saying is right. I'm scooping up all this, weird evidence that might not be true. But the way I saw it is, this is a science fiction reference. I haven't read this book in 20 years, but it seems to me like they might be setting up Rhaegar to be the Hari Seldon of Game of Thrones. And that's from Asimov's Foundation series. Seldon was basically a mathematician that invented some algorithm that could predict everything that was going to happen in the future. And so his algorithm and knowledge of the future is in the background as all these events play out, right? So I kind of Rhaegar might be heading down that path. I don't know what he's after in making sure his wife is a Stark and naming all these sons Aegon, and what he's after is one of my biggest questions about the series. Same thing with the Night King, right? Night King is his enemy in theory. What is the Night King after? So I think those two things are going to be the biggest reveal. However, there is this Business Insider article that I found saying that Rhaegar might have not even known his first son Aegon was dead by the time he named Jon Aegon. So what you're saying could be right. And to put your point about Robert up again, Gendry is still out there, right? He's Robert's lineage. So we could get a scenario where half the noble land says, oh, we like the Targaryens, we're going to go for Jon Snow or maybe Daenerys. The other half is like, no, we like Robert, we're going to go for Gendry. So that's another possible scenario.
Because the Northerners are seen as more uncouth, and so the voting in King of the North, it's a different thing. And then, of course, there wasn't lineage. I'm not worried about that, though. Good news, people. We have 2 years to speculate on this.
Yeah.
2 years.
I can run through the rest of this real fast, Dre.
Go for it.
So the King's Landing showdown, we were talking briefly about the Clegane Bowl, hype and all that. That was great. So we've been complaining about this kidnap the white idea that's been the episode before they actually did it, the few episodes before that, they set it up, and we're like, this is a lame MacGuffin. I thought it actually paid off in the end, just because that scene where the White jumps out of the box, that was just a super cool scene. And I'm like, that was all worth it. Like the way they chopped him up, and it was almost like something out of a Harryhausen movie, Jason the Argonauts or something like that. Obviously better special effects, but I thought that was a really cool monster scene, and I thought that paid off. Qyburn was great in it. He was like, actually seemed like he enjoyed the White coming out, and yeah, I like that scene.
What was interesting to me, and it actually does stay consistent with the book, is let's throw something out. The Starks are stupid and cause a lot of the problems. So it's not mentioned as much in the book or in the show, but in theory, the book has Children of the Forest magic on it. My question, if narratively what makes sense, is if Bran being touched by the Night King undoes the magic of the wall, just that's fine. And then obviously, if Jon doesn't try and go north to kidnap a White, and then also doesn't stay back and try and take down the Night King instead of fleeing when he could, the Night King doesn't have a dragon, and that means the wall stays up, and then also the Night King doesn't have a dragon. But this is very consistent. In the Game of Thrones universe, our heroes consistently make dumb decisions that don't always end up right. And George R. R. Martin in interviews has talked about this, which I like, which is just because someone is good or on the side of right or noble does not mean their decisions are good. And conversely, just because someone is evil or rude or whatever does not mean they don't make good or wise decisions. Obviously the Lannisters, Tyrion and Tywin Lannister, are both very shrewd rulers who arguably made many good decisions for the realm. Tyrion, everybody loves him, right? At this point, he's got plot armor. But Tyrion in the book, he's a drunk, he's uncouth, all this stuff. Tywin is very, unloving, whatever. So I was mad at it. Let's just be fair. Jon Snow's an idiot, and it's his fault a lot of this is happening. Consistent in the storyline, which is to say, just because you are the hero doesn't mean you always make the right decision or smart decision or correct decision.
Yeah, and to your point earlier about Jon Snow dying, I think there's a very real possibility that we're not going to have a 100% happy ending, right? It's going to be a bittersweet or sad ending in a lot of different ways, I think, for sure. And I think it's very likely that Jon Snow is going to be a big contributor to that in some way. With his stupidity.
So you said I don't. So some of these.
Well, I'm actually ready for the NBA.
I think everybody said that, right? I mean, everybody knew that the last scene of the season had to be the wall going down. We got what we want. Ice Dragon, freaking terrifying. What's going to happen? I mean, we'll see what their CGI budget is for season 8. But, oh, man, there's going to be some fun dragon scenes.
I think one last thing, Dre, about season 8. I think they announced that all 6 episodes are going to be feature length, 120 minutes plus, I think was said.
Awesome. And we'll see. Rick and Morty might be out. Season 4 might be out by then if they follow this. We talked Theon. So one storyline is Theon is basically going to go after Yara. This could be interesting because one of the other storylines we were told is Euron pretends he's running away.
Yeah.
But it is revealed that Cersei is actually sending him to pick up an army that's going to defend against the zombies come whatever happens. Don't forget that just in general, the Greyjoys, no matter who they are, have always been kind of backstabby. And there's a very real chance that Theon and Yara do take down Euron and combine. And then they've got an army. They've got the Golden Company, and they might come back and betray somebody. So that no matter what's going on, something fun is going on in the background. One last example that you brought up. Or didn't make it, but I did want to talk that I haven't seen talked a lot about, but Podrick and Bronn exit kind of, and what's going on there, because don't forget, right before that happened, Tyrion told him, whatever they're paying you, I'll pay. Don't forget my offer. So I'm wondering if those two hop ship somewhere.
Yeah, that's possible. And those two characters I think are fan favorites, so they'll do something interesting.
All right. Holy cow! Let's see. So we got a few. So I made a tweet that just noted a couple of comparisons. So my first comparison was to Littlefinger, because with all the hype, all the buildup to just end unceremoniously, which again, I don't actually have a problem with, I compared him to the 1995 Orlando Magic. This was the team with Penny Hardaway and Shaquille O'Neal that made it all the way to the finals. They're huge favorites in the finals, and then they implode in the finals, get blown out, and then fall apart after that, and just nothing ever comes of it. Right? Penny Hardaway is injured. Shaq leaves Orlando. It felt very much the same. Had a great comment on Twitter to me by Jacob Resnick, who said, more like the 2013 Lakers. I think both are great comparisons. Where you basically have this team with all this hype going into it and then nothing. And so the same thing, 2013 Lakers, for those of you who don't remember, they picked up Steve Nash. They signed Dwight Howard. Of course, Kobe's still coming back. I think they still had Powell, right? And so then of course, what happens? Steve Nash goes down injured. Dwight Howard's not healthy the whole season. Kobe Bryant's a chucker, and they just get blown out in the playoffs and fall apart. So either is great. It also leads to some other fun comparisons. The one I have now too is the Night King picking up the dragon reminds me of the Golden State Warriors last season, where basically you have this behemoth juggernaut team that had an unexpected loss, but then adds one key component is even stronger. So that is just like last year's Golden State Warriors.
So you're saying the Night King is going to win next season with only one loss, like the Warriors in the playoffs. Maybe one of the Nightwalkers will die.
You could call the taking down the wall the 2017 NBA championship. If you will.
Oh, I see. Okay. So we're doing season by season, not for the whole show. Yeah. Okay. I like that then. I like that.
And then my question is if you had any other comparisons to other NBA teams to NBA to the Thrones. And if you don't,
I didn't put any work into this, unfortunately, but I wish I did now.
Oh, one I'll give you, by the way, Jon Snow, I think, is very much like the post-Tyson Chandler, post-Jason Kidd Dallas Mavericks, where you basically have a team that was good and it just stays loyal to a fault, arguably at hurting other things.
I like that.
Okay, okay, we don't really have a ton of time to say Rick and Morty. My complaint, Rick and Morty, is fantastic episode, very interesting sci-fi premise. They go to a spa, but like a sci-fi spa, where they get detoxified and the toxins take out all of their bad qualities. But it turns out this is objective. The bad qualities it detoxifies you out are the qualities you think are bad. So Rick gets rid of his super big ego, but then also his irrational love of Morty. Gets rid of basically his fear and his kind of weakness and humility and all that. So very, very interesting episode. I actually thought it was too short. Like that was my kind of complaint, is it was a 30-minute episode and it was a very interesting premise. And I thought it was a great episode. And it left me wanting more by the time it was done. So very funny, great Rick and Morty. I think your point is well put, where I think I've been hurting Rick and Morty a little, putting it next to Game of Thrones, because it is supposed to be kind of a silly sci-fi 30-minute show. And I'm actually glad the last two episodes we've kind of got back to it and have done great. So I really like the episode. Really good. I'd have more to say if we hadn't talked already for over an hour and a half.
Yeah, I just think it was really interesting what the toxic side of each of them ended up being, and then how them without their toxic side reacted to it, if that makes sense. So yeah, like you said, Rick without his toxin is just a pretty normal guy. But he was desperate to get his toxin back. He's like, yeah, I want to love Morty again. I want to be a drunk and mad scientist again. I want to get crazy again. I don't like being normal.
The way it was kind of presented to me with watching that episode is he basically said, the toxic side of me is part of me, and it has a right to exist. And I don't have a right to just snuff it out just because I don't necessarily like it. And so that was very interesting. But then I think he also acknowledged when they were fighting, and then even before, when he slapping Morty, he's realizing he doesn't care for Morty. So he's going work together. And so, I mean, that is a very classic sci-fi trope thing, the yin and yang split personality and having to reform, very Dark Crystal-y, right?
They're remaking that, by the way, I think.
We'll see. It's too many tangents to show.
Yeah.
All right, but great episode of Rick and Morty. Like I said, comfortable calling him a push. Glad we have more to look forward to on Rick and Morty, though I have to wait another week.
2 weeks. Yeah. Boy.
But we'll get there. All right. I do have a shout out. Dave Barry did his second article for Forbes, and it was actually on Fast Pitch, basically the Major League Softball Association, and on Monica Abbott, aka, this is a fantastic name. She signed the biggest contract. It was a 6-year deal for $1 million. She's called the $1 Million Arm. Now, hopefully, she doesn't have a 10-cent head like the classic quote. But he wrote about basically the most amazing streak for like I said, her nickname is the $1 Million Arm. The title game, the title series, sorry, it was best of 3, where they were down 0-1. She pitched basically 14 innings with 25 strikeouts and put like the league's best offense to 1 run. Amazing job. So he basically called it like a Wilt Chamberlain-ish accomplishment where, Fast Pitch, that league has only been around years. But this could be a Wilt Chamberlain-ish scenario where 30 to 40 years, this accomplishment has never been matched. So great article. Check it out at Forbes. We'll include a link in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any shout outs, but I did notice also on Dave Barry's Twitter that Raleigh Massimino passed away. Longtime college coach. So yeah, I love watching his teams back in the day. Shout out to him.
All right, 2 good shout-outs. Apologies for starting half an hour late. Glad we were able to get that all in. Actually, we left some stuff on the cutting room floor, so that means we have more content for next week. If you found us not through the website, you can find us at boxscoregeeks.com. You can follow us on iTunes and Stitcher, any place where you can download podcasts. We are the Boxscore Geeks Show. You can catch us live, usually if twitch.tv isn't down, at twitch.tv/nerd numbers every week, either Tuesday or Wednesday at 9:30 p.m., assuming no technical difficulties, Eastern Standard Time. And you can catch recaps on channel Nerd Numbers on YouTube. I've been your host, Dre Alvarez, aka Nerd Numbers, produced as always by Brian Foster. You can find on Twitter as Boxscore Brian. Guest co-host Andrew Sutton, who you should be hearing more from this NBA season. Yell at us if you don't. Hope you have a good one, and we will see you next week.